Greetings and salutations all, this is Lydia. Today I'll be sharing the first in what I hope will be a series of videos called Lydia's Library. The purpose of this series is to share with you some of my favorite tomes and provide a bit of commentary, some favorite quotations, and an introduction if you've never heard of them before. So today's episode will be about the Screwtape letters. This is a book by C.S. Lewis, and I've been thinking about developing this series for a while. I have been working on two other videos at the same time, and I just thought, I'm just going to go ahead and get this one finished up because I did it once and posted it and you couldn't hear the audio. So now I'm doing it a second time and fingers crossed. In any event, the other two videos I'm working on, just to give you a brief channel update, is the Moonlight experiment. I did conduct the experiment yesterday, not last night, but the night before last, and there were some issues with my experimental method, so I'll go into those when I post the new video of the experiment. I'm waiting for a non-cloudy night. I think Saturday night here is going to be pretty clear. I know the moon won't be completely full, but hopefully we can still get some data, and then during the next full moon I might repeat the experiment, and then also that'll give us a check, or maybe I'll just conduct the experiment every so often to kind of chart if there are differences or not. So who knows. I am working on it, and I will get a video up hopefully by the end of the weekend. We shall see. The other video I'm working on, in addition to the moon video, is a Geodesy Flat Earth Coffin Nail Volume 2, or second round, I haven't decided, probably second round, where I'll be taking more of the flat Earth perspective of geodesy, done a little bit more research into it, and I think, I think it's pretty interesting. The science is interesting and some of the underlying assumptions. But getting back to this video, so there are quite a few books that in my life grown up to know and love, but I was inspired to share the Screwtape letters for a couple of reasons, but mainly because of a verse I was reading in the Bible. So to give you a little background, I have grown up in the church, baptized when I was 8 or 9 years old, kind of fell away and did a backsliding, especially my undergraduate years, and then just in the last year, I came back to Christ, by God's grace, and just complete change in my life. I don't know if I wasn't saved the first time, or I don't know if you can lose your salvation, but I just feel like a new person from the old. So if you're a Christian, you'll know what I mean by that. Anyway, I listened to quite a few online pastors and biblical scholars, commentaries, things like that, Face Like the Sun, Vigilant Christian, to name a couple. And Rob Skiba, thumbs up. Anyway, and one of the pastors, I don't remember who I was listening to, and not all, they probably wouldn't call themselves pastors, this was a different pastor. One of the pastors I was listening to made a comment that most atheists know more about the Bible than Christians, and that Christians should read the Bible cover to cover. And I thought about that. He didn't say it exactly that way, he said it very eloquently, and I thought about that and decided, what, I am going to read the Bible cover to cover, because I've never done that, even though I've been in the church, previously when I was a child, years and years and years. And, I probably read most, if not all, of the New Testament, but not the Old Testament, though I've, referenced it, especially Psalms, those tend to come up. So that's what I've been doing for the last 8 months or so, and I'll read maybe a chapter 2, 3 a day. I don't try to tackle a whole book usually, unless I'm close to the end. I'm just gonna get this done. But and I don't get it every day, so I definitely slip up and miss days. In any event, recently I was reading Jeremiah 23. I'm still in Jeremiah. There's a section about false prophets here, and in verse 15 in the King James Version says, "Therefore thus saith the Lord of hosts concerning the prophets, Behold, I will feed them with wormwood, and make them drink the water of gall. For from the prophets of Jerusalem is profaneness gone forth into all the land." Again, this is about the false prophets. And what struck me about that, because I was having some difficulty with the Moonlight experiment and couldn't get that video out, is the word wormwood, which is one of the main characters in the Screwtape letters. So I thought, you know what, I'll go ahead and get this video out there since I can't do the other videos right now that, well, I could do the Geodesy video, but I'm going to save that one for a little later probably. So anyway, so that is my thought and decision behind the Screwtape letters. Also, I hope you enjoy this image of the books here. I was going to put a really fancy picture of like a library with a ladder, or a nice bookshelf, or cases of books, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to be a little bit more accurate. I have a 2-year-old. This is what my book collection looks like right now because he is not a fan of the literary arts as such. So I hope you like that. That's not my particular stack, but very, very similar. This is a picture of C.S. Lewis, who is the author of the Screwtape letters. His full name is Clive Staples Lewis. So C.S. Lewis, I'm sure many people have heard of him, especially if you're a Christian. He is a novelist, I mean, you could do a whole video on who C.S. Lewis was, right? He was an Englishman, and he fought in World War I believe. He was an atheist up until the age of 33. He lost his mother when he was 8 years old, and that was a very disillusioning experience for him. But he was converted in 1931 to being a Christian. And that was after a long talk with J.R.R. Tolkien and Hugo Dyson. So some of this information is available on the book cover here that I have, and also at cslewis.org. There's a lot of information. So C.S. Lewis is one of my favorite, I mean probably my absolute favorite author, really. Just amazing. And he has written books that I think span a number of tastes. I mean, his most famous works are probably the Chronicles of Narnia. Not probably, I'm sure they are the Chronicles of Narnia. But he also has written many Christian apologetics books, especially being an adult convert. And the thing I love about the Screwtape letters is that one of the characters in here is a later, it converts to Christianity in adulthood. And I think it really speaks to C.S. Lewis and his heart, and I don't know. I mean, was he thinking about himself when he was talking about some of these? I mean, every author is a bit self-reflective. They have to be, right? Some of his other Christian apologetic books, Mere Christianity, The Great Divorce, I believe Miracles is also, and there are many others. But I've read Mere Christianity and The Great Divorce, and I'll probably do a future video on those. Not right after this one. We'll probably get a little bit more diverse, and I'll talk about some of the other books that I will be doing a video on in the future for this series, if people like it. And then after I get through those, I'll probably take recommendations, maybe, and see if there's anything that other people say, you probably really like this, because I feel like that could be really fun. Anyway, so that's a little tiny glimpse of C.S. Lewis and who he was. So we'll go ahead and move on to the book itself, the Screwtape letters. The Screwtape letters take place in sometime in the 1940s during World War II. There's an introduction that C.S. Lewis pens, which is really kind of funny. He says he's not going to say how he came about the Screwtape letters, but he's not going to share that information because people may be led astray. He puts the date here of 5th of July 1941. So that's when, that kind of time frame. So I'll give a little bit of context to the book, and then I'll read the first letter, maybe the first two. I think I'll read the first two, and then I'll just do a few blurbs here and there. So you'll excuse me if I have to introduce a little bit of backstory before some of these pieces, just to give you an idea of what they're talking about, since I'll skip around quite a bit. It's a really great book. I bought my copy, I think, on Amazon for maybe $9, but I think you may be able to get this for free on PDF. Oh, and also, I don't want to forget to share this. Oh, don't look. Okay, there's if you want to hear somebody do an absolutely fantastic rendition of the Screwtape letters, because I am not the best impressionist, not that I know what Screwtape actually sounded like, but even so, I don't do the best demon voice. Maybe that's a good thing. You can go to screwtape.com, and there is I guess it's a download, or maybe you get the CDs of professional grade audio recording of the Screwtape letters, which I kind of want to buy, even though I love reading it. They have excerpts here that you can listen to as a sample, right? And I think I listened to all of these, and it just will chill your blood, really. Andy Serkis, I'm probably mispronouncing that, sorry, does the main vocal work in this audio, and he is also the voice actor behind Gollum in The Lord of the Rings, which is kind of a funny little connection, right? He is, of course, J.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, good friends. Like I said, J.R. Tolkien didn't talk him into, but definitely argued the case for Christ and Christianity, and so, you know, obviously Lord of the Rings being J.R. Tolkien's most famous, or The Hobbit, you know, maybe both of those, but he was in both those, right? So anyway, that is my maybe recommendation if you want some really great vocal reading, and that's what you prefer to reading the book yourself. You can read it in full, but you do have to pay for this, of course. All right, so we'll just get back here and present. Should probably just paused it, but that's okay. Alright, so getting back to the Screwtape letters, this is dedicated to J.R. Tolkien. It's like a Tolkien fest over here. And this is a C.S. Lewis book. And in the front of the book, so you'll hear me rustling the pages. Like I said, I bought the book because I just love the tactile feel. I don't know, you feel more connection to the written word, in my humble opinion, when you're reading it on pages instead of on a screen. And plus, hey, if we ever lose the internet, no problem. I still have my books, right? And some on sustainability. So there you go. Anyway, so there are two quotes that C.S. Lewis chose to put in the front here, so I'll read those. The best way to drive out the devil, if he will not yield to text of Scripture, is to jeer and flout him, for he cannot bear scorn. That's by Luther. The second quote, the devil, the proud spirit, cannot endure to be mocked, by Thomas More. So you can kind of see C.S. Lewis's mindset here, that he's making fun of the devil a bit, maybe a lot. And it's just a terrific, I don't know, you'll see, you'll hear, rather. So I'll go ahead and read the first letter. Just a little context, you don't have it too much in the beginning, but the letters are all from a chief demon named Screwtape, and they're written to his nephew Wormwood. So in this little story, Wormwood is a junior tempter. When a demon, I don't know, becomes of age or whatever, they don't really go into it that much, he goes to a university to learn how to tempt humans so that they will go to hell instead of heaven, obviously, and they want the humans to go to hell so they can feast on them for all eternity. It's lovely. It's lovely, really. So, as you hear this is all the letters are from Screwtape to Wormwood, and you'll hear reference to the enemy or our enemy, and that's referring to God, because he's a demon. And our Father below, obviously referring to Lucifer/Satan, right? Alright, so, and they refer to the patient. So the patient is the person that Wormwood has been assigned to tempt and lead astray. They never use his name in the book, which I think is kind of a really cool literary tool. C.S. Lewis says, he tried to conceal the identity of any human beings. I think that it also speaks to the fact that this could be anyone, that everybody has struggles, everybody has temptations, and everyone has the chance to be saved from those and to be relieved of their burdens. So I don't know if, again, this is my commentary. I'm not a literary expert. I just really love books. Not all books, but a lot of books. So, okay, so we'll get into it here with letter 1. My dear Wormwood, I note what you say about guiding your patient's reading and taking care that he sees a good deal of his materialist friends. But are you not being a trifle naive? It sounds as if you suppose that argument was the way to keep him out of the enemy's clutches. That might have been so if he had lived a few centuries earlier. At that time, the humans still knew pretty well when a thing was proved and when it was not. And if it was proved, they really believed it. They still connected thinking with doing, and were prepared to alter their way of life as the result of a chain of reasoning. But what with the weekly press and other such weapons, we have largely altered that. Your man has been accustomed, ever since he was a boy, to have a dozen incompatible philosophies dancing about together inside his head. He doesn't think of doctrines as primarily true or false, but as academic or practical, outworn or contemporary, conventional or ruthless. Jargon, not argument, is your best ally in keeping him from the church. Don't waste time trying to make him think that materialism is true. Make him think it is strong or stark or courageous. That is a philosophy of the future. That's the sort of thing he cares about. The trouble about argument is that it moves the whole struggle onto the enemy's own ground. He can argue too, whereas in really practical propaganda of the kind I am suggesting, he has been shown for centuries to be greatly the inferior of our Father below. By the very act of arguing, you awake the patient's reason, and once it is awake, who can foresee the result? Even if a particular train of thought can be twisted so as to end in our favor, you will find that you have been strengthening in your patient the fatal habit of attending to universal issues and withdrawing his attention from the stream of immediate sense experiences. Your business is to fix his attention on the stream. Teach him to call it real life, and don't let him ask what he means by real. Remember, he is not, like you, a pure spirit. Never having been human, oh, that abominable advantage of the enemies! You don't realize how enslaved they are to the pressure of the ordinary. I once had a painter, a sound atheist, who used to read in the British Museum. One day, as he sat reading, I saw a train of thought in his mind beginning to go the wrong way. The enemy, of course, was at his elbow in a moment. Before I knew where I was, I saw my 20 years' work beginning to totter. If I had lost my head and begun to attempt a defense by argument, I should have been undone. But I was not such a fool. I struck instantly at the part of the man which I had best under my control, and suggested that it was just about time he had some lunch. The enemy, presumably, made the counter-suggestion. You know how you can never quite overhear what he says to them? That this was more important than lunch. At least, I think that must have been his line, for when I said quite, in fact, much too important to tackle at the end of a morning, the patient brightened up considerably, and by the time I had added, much better come back after lunch and go into it with a fresh mind, he was already halfway to the door. Once he was in the street, the battle was won. I showed him a newsboy shouting the midday paper and a number 73 bus going past, and before he reached the bottom of the steps, I got him an unalterable conviction that, whatever odd ideas might come into a man's head when he was shut up alone with his books, a healthy dose of real life, by which he meant the bus and the newsboy, was enough to show him that all that sort of thing just couldn't be true. He knew he had a narrow escape, and in later years was fond of talking about that inarticulate sense for actuality which is our ultimate safeguard against the aberrations of mere logic. He is now safe in our Father's house. You begin to see the point? Thanks to processes which we set at work in them centuries ago, they find it all but impossible to believe in the unfamiliar, while the familiar is before their eyes. Keep pressing home on him the ordinariness of things. Above all, do not attempt to use science, I mean the real sciences, as a defense against Christianity. They will positively encourage him to think about realities he can't touch and see. There have been sad cases amongst the modern physicists. If he must dabble in science, keep him on economics and sociology. Don't let him get away from that invaluable real life. But the best of all is to let him read no science, but to give him a grand general idea that he knows it all, and that everything he happens to have picked up in casual talk and reading is the result of modern investigation. Do remember, you are there to fuddle him. From the way some of you young fiends talk, anyone would suppose it was your job to teach. Your affectionate uncle, Screwtape. Alright, so that was all of letter number 1, and, wow. There's just so much that we could say here. All the letters are pretty short. I mean, this is, 3-4 pages. So first, I love how Screwtape is saying, don't use argument, use propaganda. Because if you use argument, then it makes them think critically. They start to ask questions, and you don't know which way that it's going to go. And in fact, it's very dangerous because the truth is in God's side, right? He is the truth, and I love that. Satan is the father of lies. It speaks to that. So this is not, gospel. This is not a biblical book, but it is definitely inspired by that in many ways, I think, And I don't know that all of it is biblically accurate. I don't think demons go to university, but it's not meant to be. So just, taking all those kind of thoughts, it's meant to be a fictional work here. I also love, when he talks about propaganda, I mean, wow, how applicable, and I haven't read this, it's been 5 or 10 years since I read this probably, and as I was rereading it in preparation for this video and picking out some quotes to share, I just thought I have to read this whole first letter because it just is so applicable to today's world, I think. I mean, he talks about the weekly press, but man, the internet, television, forget about propaganda back then. The propaganda machine now is just way, way more intense than I think anyone could have imagined. Yeah, and also when he says, don't let him look at the real sciences, that is very interesting to me, especially as I'm beginning to test things and do my own experiments. It just makes me think that the fact of the matter is there is one truth, and I believe that truth is that, there is one God, and that, he sent his son, Jesus Christ, in the flesh to be crucified and resurrected, and that, and to pay for my sins, for the world's sins, and that, and I believe that, that God is the creator of all things, of heaven and earth, and that real science, when you're examining the creation, it shows you that there is a creator. It shows you that it's designed. I mean, you look at DNA sequencing, the symbiosis between organisms in the world. It's amazing. Even if whether the earth is flat or a globe, it's a miracle. It's an absolute beautiful miracle. And any really true objective view of that would reveal the beauty, the majesty, the mystery that creation is. And so you don't want somebody thinking about that. I mean, he makes mention that, then he'll have to think about places he can't see and touch. I think that's true too, but when I read that, that's what I take from it. I also love, he says, there's been there have been some sad cases among the modern physicists. Well, in 1940, one of the modern physicists, and I don't know that he was a Christian, that in fact I think he probably was not, was Nikola Tesla, and I'll be probably doing a video on one of his books later. So that also, because this is in the 1940s. I don't know that C.S. Lewis knew Tesla or anything, but just kind of funny that that kind of synchronicity there. So I think I'll go ahead and read the second letter, which is just about the same length as the first, and then we'll dive into some of my favorite quotations here in different sections. Alright, so letter number 2. My dear Wormwood, I note with grave displeasure that your patient has become a Christian. Do not indulge the hope that you will escape the usual penalties. Indeed, in your better moments, I trust you would hardly even wish to do so. In the meantime, we must make the best of the situation. There is no need to despair. Hundreds of these adult converts have been reclaimed after a brief sojourn in the enemy's camp and are now with us. All the habits of the patient, both mental and bodily, are still in our favor. One of our great allies at present is the Church itself. Do not misunderstand me. I do not mean the Church as we see her spread out through all time and space and rooted in eternity, terrible as an army with banners. That, I confess, is a spectacle which makes our boldest tempters uneasy. But fortunately, it is quite invisible to these humans. All your patient sees is the half-finished sham Gothic erection of the new building estate. When he goes inside, he sees a local grocer with rather an oily expression on his face, bustling up to offer him one shiny little book containing a liturgy which neither of them understands, and one shabby little book containing corrupt text of a number of religious lyrics, mostly bad, and in very small print. When he gets to his pew and looks round him, he sees just that selection of his neighbors whom he has hitherto avoided. You want to lean pretty heavily on those neighbors. Make his mind flit to and fro between an expression like the body of Christ and the actual faces in the next pew. It matters very little, of course, what kind of people that next pew really contains. You may know one of them to be a great warrior on the enemy's side. No matter. Your patient, thanks to our Father below, is a fool. Provided that any of those neighbors sings out of tune, or have boots that squeak, or double chins, or odd clothes, the patient will quite easily believe that their religion must therefore be somehow ridiculous. At his present stage, you see, he has an idea of Christians in his mind which he supposes to be spiritual, but which, in fact, is largely pictorial. His mind is full of togas and sandals and armor and bare legs, and the mere fact that the other people in church wear modern clothes is a real, though of course an unconscious, difficulty to him. Never let it come to the surface. Never let him ask what he expected them to look like. Keep everything hazy in his mind now, and you will have all eternity wherein to amuse yourself by producing in him the peculiar kind of clarity which hell affords. Work hard, then, on the disappointment or anticlimax which is certainly coming to the patient during his first few weeks as a churchman. The enemy allows this disappointment to occur on the threshold of every human endeavor. It occurs when the boy who has been enchanted in the nursery by stories from the Odyssey buckles down to really learning Greek. It occurs when lovers have got married and begin the real task of learning to live together. In every department of life, it marks the transition from dreaming aspiration to laborious doing. The enemy takes this risk because he has a curious fantasy of making all these disgusting little human vermin into what he calls his free lovers, and sons is the word he uses, and his inveterate love of degrading the whole spiritual world by unnatural liaisons with the two-legged animals, desiring their freedom. He therefore refuses to carry them by their mere affections and habits to any of the goals which he sets before them. He leaves them to do it on their own. And there lies our opportunity. But also remember, there lies our danger. If once they get through this initial dryness successfully, they become much less dependent on emotion, and therefore much harder to tempt. I have been writing hitherto on the assumption that the people in the next pew afford no rational ground for disappointment. Of course, if they do, if the patient knows that the woman with the absurd hat is a fanatical bridge player, or the man with squeaky boots is a miser and an extortioner, then your task is so much the easier. All you then have to do is to keep out of mind the question, if I, being what I am, can consider that I am in some sense a Christian, why should the different vices of those people in the next pew prove that their religion is mere hypocrisy and convention? You may ask whether it is possible to keep such an obvious thought from occurring even to a human mind. It is, Wormwood. It is. Handle him properly, and it simply won't come into his head. He has not been anything like long enough with the enemy to have any real humility yet. What he says, even on his knees, about his own sinfulness is all parrot talk. At the bottom, he still believes he has run up a very favorable credit balance in the enemy's ledger by allowing himself to be converted, and thinks that he is showing great humility and condescension in going to church with these smug, commonplace neighbors at all. Keep him in that state of mind as long as you can. Your affectionate Uncle Screwtape. All right, so that was the end of letter 2. I think there's a few things that we could say about the second letter there. I, just in general, the tone of Screwtape, that Wormwood won't avoid punishment. I don't know. All those little things are just so fun, to think about, yeah, you're going to get punished for this, I love what he says about the church, going through time, space, eternity. And because as a Christian, you can't see the full glory of God. You can't see that. You can feel part of it, but you can't see that in its whole, obviously. So that is just a really powerful image, that it conjures, really. Yeah, and then all the information about, don't think about human experience is so surface level, and he can't see that somebody may be a powerful warrior on the enemy side. I just think that's also cool. So yeah, so that's the brief first two letters. I'm gonna skip ahead to letter 7, and I won't read all of letter 7, but just the first couple paragraphs here. It's pretty interesting. All right, letter 7. My dear Wormwood, I wondered you should ask me whether it is essential to keep the patient in ignorance of your existence. That question, at least for the present phase of the struggle, has been answered for us by the High Command. Our policy, for the moment, is to conceal ourselves. Of course, this has not always been so. We are really faced with a cruel dilemma. When the humans disbelieve in our existence, we lose all the pleasing results of direct terrorism, and we make no magicians. On the other hand, when they believe in us, we cannot make them materialists and skeptics. At least, not yet. I have great hopes that we shall learn in due time how to emotionalize and mythologize their science to such an extent that what is, in effect, a belief in us, though not under that name, will creep in, while the human mind remains closed to belief in the enemy. The life force, the worship of sex, and some aspects of psychoanalysis may here prove useful. If once we can produce our perfect work, the materialist magician, the man not using, but veritably worshipping, what he vaguely calls forces, while denying the existence of spirits, then the end of the war will be in sight. But in the meantime we must obey our orders. I do not think you will have much difficulty in keeping the patient in the dark. The fact that devils are predominantly comic figures in the modern imagination will help you. If any faint suspicion of your existence begins to arise in his mind, suggest to him a picture of something in red tights, and persuade him that since he cannot believe in that, it is in an old textbook method of confusing them, he therefore cannot believe in you. So that was the section I wanted to read. So let me let me start by saying that, of course, all of this is just my opinion. Take it or leave it. It's just my thoughts. But for me, that is just so where we are at today. That science is no longer science. It's a belief structure. And specifically when I think about, okay, so I'm just gonna put it out there. I don't believe in aliens. I don't believe that there are intelligent beings or life on any other planet. I'm still questioning, whether what I believe as far as the, physical composure of the galaxy or universe, our world. But even if even if you subscribe to the heliocentric globe Earth model, even when I, still fully believed in that, I stopped believing in aliens. I believe that alien abductions and alien sightings are all manifestations of demons. Or, in some cases it may be that there are cases where good angels may manifest as such. But I mean, as far as the abductions themselves, I believe that's all demonic. You hear about horrible torture being done to people, just perverse things, and it just all speaks to the very unnatural, evil intents of demons. I almost said aliens, but to me they're the same thing. And so I think about, when I read this, I'm thinking about an atheist scientist who believes in aliens, and I mean, how many people are there out there? Maybe not even a scientist, right? Maybe just a layman, who are out there who believe in aliens. Maybe they believe in some universal force. I mean, the force, of course makes me think of Star Wars. Not that I think anybody believes that there's such a thing as the force, but it's in the mindset, isn't it? It's in entertainment that there are maybe higher forces, but not spirits necessarily. And so anyway, so I'm just thinking about this person I'm just thinking that it's so easy for somebody to say, I don't believe in God, I believe in the Big Bang, and I believe in aliens. I mean, think about that. That's exactly what he's saying here. Science right now states that is completely possible. As a matter of fact, that's probably what's preached. One could argue that there's a Big Bang, there's no need for a creator, and there's probably intelligent life on other planets. So now you have people out there looking for these aliens, wearing all their t-shirts and these movies about aliens. And in a very real sense, one could argue that they are worshipers of aliens. That their life may revolve around that. And in a small way, a lot of people are impacted by that. So anyway, I just think, wow, Screwtape, dead on accurate portrayal of where we're at right now. He said, oh, well, we can maybe do this and, which science did he specifically, I don't know that he mentioned a specific one, did he? No, I just read it, but psychoanalysis. Yeah, I mean, psychoanalysis, there are people who do those regressive memories and things like that for their abductions. But really, I think in the realm of physics, this has been done in theoretical physics more than any other field. My humble opinion, but that is what I'm providing here. Okay, so we'll skip over now to the next little quote or section that I have marked here. The next letter that I'm going to read from is letter number 8, so just the next letter over. And here, Wormwood Screwtape is mentioning the fact that Wormwood is celebrating that the patient was very strongly, feeling the Spirit of God, and now he's in a period of dryness where he's felt the Spirit of the Lord slightly withdraw. And Screwtape is explaining to him that this is just a natural cycle, that faith and, not really the faith, but the experience of feeling the Spirit of God can ebb and flow, that there are peaks and valleys, and that God relies on the valleys just as much as the peaks, because, I'm not going to say too much about why he does, because that's the section I'm going to read, but that's just to give you the context of it. So let's see here. I'll pick up here. The dryness and dullness through which your patient is now going are not, as you so fondly suppose, your workmanship. They are merely a natural phenomenon which will do us no good unless you make a good use of it. To decide what the best use of it is, you must ask what use the enemy wants to make of it, and then do the opposite. Now it may surprise you to learn that in his efforts to get permanent possession of a soul, he relies on the troughs even more than on the peaks. Some of his special favorites have gone through longer and deeper troughs than anyone else. The reason is this. To us, a human is primarily food. Our aim is the absorption of its will into ours, the increase of our own area of selfhood at its expense. But the obedience which the enemy demands of men is quite a different thing. One must face the fact that all that talk about his love for men and his service being perfect freedom is not, as one would gladly believe, mere propaganda, but an appalling truth. He really does want to fill the universe with a lot of loathsome little replicas of himself, creatures whose life on its miniature scale will be qualitative like his own, not because he has absorbed them, but because their wills freely conform to his. We want cattle who can finally become food. He wants servants who can finally become sons. We want to suck in, he wants to give out. We are empty and would be filled. He is full and flows over. Our war aim is a world in which our Father below has drawn all other beings into himself. The enemy wants a world full of beings united to him, but still distinct. So that's pretty much what I wanted to read. I think that speaks a lot to the nature of God, and there's more in this chapter that God does not override human will. He wants us to give up our will and conform it to his own, and even though it's, again, this is why I love this book so much, right? Because even though it's from the the perspective of this demon. I had never, when I read this the first time, it's hard to remember, right, my reaction the first time to this, but when I first read this, I just thought, wow, of course, the devil, if, the devil would want people to be these, non-questioning cattle. And when you think about cattle, what are they, they just eat, lie around, not active. They, don't really care about anything other than when their next meal is coming, and they're just meant to breed and consume. And that isn't what God wants for us. He doesn't want us to be these docile, I mean, he does there for, of course, the sheep and the shepherd, because he wants to guide us, but he wants us to be ourselves, and that we are more ourselves within Christ than we could ever be outside of Christ. I don't know, this is something that when I first read it, I just thought, oh my goodness. I don't know. I'm not doing a great job of conveying the emotion I felt, but maybe you feel it too, so maybe that's okay. All right, so now we're going to skip a little bit ahead here to page 50, but that doesn't help me. Letter 10. This is just a quote from letter 10. All mortals tend to turn into the thing they are pretending to be. I thought that was a really cool quote. No, there's not a lot of context there. He was, the patient is, I don't know, I guess this is when when he's hanging out with some communist friends and pretending, he's just saying that it doesn't matter. It's a cool quote. All right. So then we'll skip ahead. Oh, this is maybe my favorite quote in the book, and I believe I've seen this before, maybe on, how people have the memes and things. those youngsters with their memes. Okay, so this is at the very end of letter 12. Indeed, the safest road to hell is the gradual one, the gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones, without signposts. I can stand. I'm just gonna let that stand on its own. It's awesome. All right, so now I have a little bit of a longer section. This is in letter 13, and yeah, okay. So it's about halfway through letter 13. Of course, I know that the enemy also wants to detach men from themselves, but in a different way. Remember always that he really likes the little vermin, and sets an absurd value on the distinctness of every one of them. When he talks of their losing their selves, he only means abandoning the clamor of self-will. Once they have done that, he really gives them back all their personality and boast. I am afraid, sincerely, that when they are wholly his, they will be more themselves than ever. Hence, while he is delighted to see them sacrificing even their innocent wills to his, he hates to see them drifting away from their own nature for any other reason. And we should always encourage them to do so. The deepest likings and impulses of any man are the raw material and the starting point with which the enemy has furnished him. So that just goes back to that other quote that I read, or that other section that I read about, and comments I made about being distinct. Alright, so the next quote here is at the end of 14. The enemy will also try to render real in the patient's mind a doctrine which they all profess, but find it difficult to bring home to their feelings. The doctrine that they did not create themselves, that their talents were given to them, and that they might as well be proud of the color of their hair. I love that. I think everybody has, most people, maybe it's just me, I struggle sometimes with humility, and I think everybody has something they're proud of, whether it's that you're a great athlete, maybe you graduate top of your class, you're very intelligent, maybe it's that you are a great painter. I mean, they're all types of things, because everybody has talents, and it's so easy to think and get into this that, well, I did this, I made this, and to have that pride, and it's not that you can't celebrate good work. It's not that you can't appreciate the beauty of something that you've created or reflect on the fact that that was an interesting observation you made. It's more that there should be that recognition that it's a gift. All of it is a gift, whatever your talents may be. And anyway, so he says in here that, that what the enemy wants is that if you build the most beautiful, the greatest cathedral, that you could look at that and say, that's a beautiful cathedral. But that if someone else built the most beautiful cathedral, that you could also look at that with the same amount of appreciation that you had for your own, so that you would not say, well, mine is, so that you would still feel that sense of awe and wonder at it and think, oh, that was such a great work. Equivalently, that you really do love your neighbor as yourself, that you appreciate your neighbor's work as much as you appreciate your own work, of equal value. I don't know. I'm not. You need to read the book. He says it much better. But if I read the whole thing, I would be here all day, right? All right. So this is kind of an interesting section here. This is in letter 19, and this is Screwtape's version of the devil's fall from grace. And in the beginning, when C.S. Lewis has this little introduction, and he says, don't believe everything that these demons tell you, that Satan is the father of lies, and they're going to lie to you. So keep that in mind, that you will be lied to in this book. And this is probably one of those sections. All right, so we'll pick up here. All his talk about love may be a disguise for something else. He must have some real motive for creating them and taking so much trouble about them. The reason one comes to talk as if he really had this impossible love is our utter failure to find out the real motive. What does he stand to make out of them? That is the insoluble question. I do not see that it can do any harm to tell you that this very problem was a chief cause of our father's quarrel with the enemy. When the creation of man was first mooted, and when even at that stage the enemy freely confessed that he foresaw a certain episode about a cross, our father very naturally sought an interview and asked for an explanation. The enemy gave no reply except to produce the cock and bull story about disinterested love, which he has been circulating ever since. This our father naturally could not accept. He implored the enemy to lay his cards on the table and gave him every opportunity. He admitted that he felt a real anxiety to know the secret. The enemy replied, I wish with all my heart that you did. It was, I imagine, at this stage in the interview that our father's disgust at such an unprovoked lack of confidence caused him to remove himself an infinite distance from the presence, with a suddenness which has given rise to the ridiculous enemy's story that he was forcibly thrown out of heaven. That's kind of funny. Yeah, and then just skipping down a little bit further in the same letter. You complain that my last letter does not make it clear whether I regard being in love as a desirable state for a human or not. But really, Wormwood, that is the sort of question one expects them to ask. Leave them to discuss whether love or patriotism or celibacy or candles on altars or teetotalism or education or good or bad. Can't you see there's no answer? Nothing matters at all except the tendency of a given state of mind in given circumstances to move a particular patient at a particular moment nearer to the enemy or nearer to us. Love that. I love that there are all kinds of states of being. I mean, some, obviously, well, no, actually, I shouldn't even say that. Anything that is done, any action, and really in thought too, but any actions that are done or allegiances are not necessarily good or bad. It's just, do they move you away from God or toward God? If they move you away from God, they would be bad. If they move you towards God, then they're good. And that's really the definition of sin, isn't it? It's an act that moves you further away from God. It's something where you are not conforming to the will of God, and therefore it separates you. Again, I'm not a biblical scholar, but that to me is how I think of sin, and just really cool to think, somebody could be patriotic, and it doesn't really matter, but if their patriotism has led them to reject God or embrace him, that's what matters. All right, so next section here. I have a few more. I know this video is kind of long, so I apologize, but I hope you're enjoying it though. Okay, so the next one I'm going to read from the next little section is from letter 21. And all the time, the joke is that the word mine, in its fully possessive sense, cannot be uttered by a human being about anything. In the long run, either our father or the enemy will say mine of each thing that exists, and specifically of each man. I don't know about you, but I would like that to be God, to say mine to me. This one's mine. And that reminds me in the Bible where Jesus says that, the Father has given him his sheep. And that's something that I think about, that, I want to be one of yours. I want to belong to you. And, anyway. So there you go. That's my brief commentary on that. Okay. This is a little bit longer section. It's not that long. It's like two paragraphs. So this is the beginning of letter, I keep wanting to say chapter, but letter 22. My dear Wormwood, so your man is in love, and in the worst kind he could possibly have fallen into, and with a girl who does not even appear in the report you sent me. Oh, I need to pause here. So, the Wormwood, well, Screwtape had said before, oh, Wormwood, I see that your guy is going to church, but, with his age and everything, you should see if you probably won't, with his new Christian conviction, you probably won't be able to tempt him out of celibacy. And if he won't be celibate, and if he must get married, which he doesn't want, he'd rather him be, promiscuous. But if that's not a possibility, then to try to get him to be attracted to and to marry a woman who will make it difficult for him to remain a Christian. So he said, go ahead and go into the city, make me a list of all the girls who would make that difficult for him in a number of different ways. So that's why he's referring to this list of all the women that it would be hard for him to be a Christian. And this girl isn't on it. All right, picking back up. You may be interested to learn that the little misunderstanding with the secret police, which you tried to raise about some unguarded expressions in one of my letters, has been tidied over. If you were reckoning on that to secure my good offices, you will find yourself mistaken. You shall pay for that as well as for your other blunders. Meanwhile, I enclosed a little booklet, just issued, on the new House of Correction for Incompetent Tempters. It is profusely illustrated, and you will not find a dull page in it. I have looked up this girl's dossier, and am horrified at what I find. Not only a Christian, but such a Christian. A vile, sneaking, simpering, demure, monosyllabic, mouse-like, watery, insignificant, virginal, bread and butter miss. The little brute, she makes me vomit. She stinks and scalds through the very pages of the dossier. It drives me mad. The way the world has worsened. We'd have had her to the arena in the old days. That's what her sort is made for. Not that she'd do much good there, either. A two-faced little cheat. I know the sort, who looks as if she'd faint at the sight of blood and then dies with a smile. A cheat every way. Looks as if butter wouldn't melt in her mouth, and yet has a satirical wit. The sort of creature who'd find me funny. So, of course, I just love that. Sort of creature that find me funny. Anyway, you can see why I would like that, because I do find him funny. Not that he's talking about, you know what I mean. Alright, so I'm going to skip the next one because that takes too much backstory. Okay. Alright, so this is the last quote that I selected. I ended it a little bit earlier. I didn't look at quotes in the last couple letters because I didn't want to ruin anything of the ending, which you'll definitely want to get through. So this is from letter 23. There are in all 31 letters, I believe 31. And there's also a really cool epilogue as well. At least in this book. I would imagine that's in all of the renditions, but I'm not sure. Alright, so this is the last one here. For humans must not be allowed to notice that all great moralists are sent by the enemy, not to inform men, but to remind them, to restate the primeval moral platitudes against our continual concealment of them. And that to me just speaks a lot of, in the Bible when they say, have you not heard? Is it not written? And they refer you back to the original biblical law. So that's why I picked that one out, because I thought that was kind of cool. Okay, so that is my total review of the Screwtape letters, at least, or introduction. Definitely, again, highly recommend this book. I've read it many times now, and every time it seems to speak to me in a different way. So in upcoming episodes, some of the books that I definitely want to do an episode on, and this is not in any particular order, is That's What the Old Ones Say by Chief Joseph Riverwind, My Inventions by Nikola Tesla, 1984 by George Orwell, On the Path of the Nephilim by L.A. Marzulli, and Twilight by Not If My Life Depended on It. No, definitely not that one. So after I do these 4 books and do episodes on these, I'll either see if there's something else I really want to do, or I might take suggestions. But anyway, that's what I'll be looking at. On the Trail of the Nephilim, that book is definitely one I would say that you'll want to read, because I won't be able to give you everything that you can really get out of it because of all the pictures that are included. But there's some really cool information. So if you're not familiar with the Nephilim and the theory behind the aliens and their connection to Nephilim, this is a really cool introduction. I'll probably do That's What the Old Ones Say next. Yeah, I'll probably do that one. I could say I'll do that one. And the George Orwell one, that probably is going to be 1984. That's probably going to be broken up into some pieces. I thought this one would go pretty quickly because it's a very short book, and it went, almost an hour here. So I can only imagine how long it's going to take for 1984. So anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I appreciate you listening and viewing, and God bless you all. Have a wonderful day.